Hello everyone, I'm Kristen Newby and we're coming to you today from the Duke Clinical Research Institute in Durham, North Carolina to talk about the exciting results of the early ACS trial. First of all, we're going to talk with Kathy Martz, who is going to share some of the fun facts and exciting 5 years of the trial with us, and really a credit to you all, the hard work that you put in to get us to this point. And then after that, we're going to talk with Pierluigi Tricocci, who helped lead the coordinating center, who I'm sure many of you also are familiar with, and he's going to tell us about the results of the early ACS trial. And then when we finish, we'll have a question and answer period from our live audience here in Durham. Kathy?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to go over a few of the interesting facts and fun things that we learned along the way. First of all, we had many trial partners for this trial, and I'd like to acknowledge some of them. For the MD leadership, Dr. Califf, Dr. Brunwald, Dr. Newby, Dr. Giuliano, Dr. Stroni, and Dr. Wong were all part of the study team. Global operations was Ann Killian and Lori Layton. And our Canadian partners were Dr. Paul Armstrong and Christy Sorchek. Data management was a very large group. I only have 2 names on this slide, but we had a very big team here at the DCRI. Curtis Campbell and Ann Heath led the way. Contracts and finance, Mary Sharonbrock and Mike Redden. And for our stats, which played a big role in this trial, we had Jennifer White and Bo Yang and Jinglei Pai. And for CEC, once again, I want to acknowledge it was a big team effort. The people was led with Dr. Matthew Rowe and Deb Montgomery. And our hotline MDs, the faithful people that answered these calls for the last 4 or 5 years, were Dr. Tricocci, Dr. Wang, and Dr. Newby.
And Kathy, we certainly don't want to forget our European hotline, Peter Sinov and his team at the Leuven Coordinating Center.
Oh yes, definitely for the out-of-country calls. It's definitely important to remember them as well. And our site management team here at the DCRI consisted of Cy Blackwell, Pat Gottlieb, Jennifer Collins, Rhonda Newcomb, Shirley Lumsden, and was led by Lisa Berdan, our project leader. Some of the history about the protocol was the final protocol was established March 12, 2004. So that would be 5 years ago, I believe, from now. And the first site that was regulatory complete was in April of 2004, and they were from Zanesville, Ohio. And our very first investigator meeting was May 21st, 2004 in Washington, D.C. The very first site that was activated was one of our sites in Huntsville, Alabama, Dr. Dredding's site, and that was May 13th, 2004, and they were a very high enroller in lots of trials. They enrolled their patient 11 days after getting their site activated, which is a great accomplishment. And the very first Most World site was activated was Dr. Zeimer's site in Germany, and this was in November 19th, 2004, and their first patient was enrolled 8 days later, which is a great feat, on November 27th, 2004. The first Canadian site was activated December 12th, 2004, but they were not able to enroll the first patient, while another site that was enrolled January 13th, Dr. Thao Thin's site in Montreal, 34 days after getting activated. We had many countries that participated in early ACS, and correct me if was it 22 or
29.
29, so I wasn't quite right there, but this is a list of all the countries. And if you look up at the slides, you can see that some of the countries that were the top 5 enrolling countries were Austria with 510 patients, Canada with 625, Germany was a big contributor with 1,342, Singapore had 837, and that was Israel had 837, and the United States had 2,272 patients. And we want to thank all of the countries that provided so much help to accomplish meeting this goal of enrolling all the patients. Their top 20 global sites, when you look at those, some of the countries that did a lot of enrolling for us were Germany, Israel, Austria, the Netherlands was one of the top enrollers. We had several U.S. sites, Dr. Newby's site, Dr. Malik's site and Dr. Yale Cohen's site were all high enrollers in the top 20 for the global listings. And just shows you it was a very well-rounded trial across the world. And next I want to just bring out the top 15 most of the highest enrolling sites around the world. Austria was number 1, Netherlands came in 2nd, India 3rd, Israel was the 4th and 5th, Germany was 6th, 7th, Poland, a couple more Germany, Portugal, Israel, Poland, France, and Israel again. So these were some of the people that enrolled a great deal of the patients for us in the rest of the world. And I want to mention our top 10 enrolling U.S. sites. These are the sites that the DCRI site management team talked with on a regular basis and provided us with excellent information to get this trial done on time. The top enrolling trial was the Duke Hospital. Then there's Dr. Malik's, Dr. Cohen, Dr. Kumar, Dr. Singh, Dr. Vora, Dr. Metzger, Dr. Chang, Dr. Lee, and Dr. Nygaard. And we can't forget all their study coordinators who did so much to help us complete this trial. And once again, we have the top 10 enrolling Canadian sites. And I know I will not say these names all properly, so how good are you, Kristen? You any better with the names than me?
Well, we have, no.
Okay.
Wow. These are hard names.
They're the hardest names of the whole.
It's bad for us as Americans not to be able to put the accents in the right places.
So,
but some incredible accomplishments. Maybe Pierluigi could help us with his international abilities. He said he can do way better than us. He's a native Italian.
Yeah. Well, I will try here. Dr. Senaratne was the top enroller. Dr. Lechmiddle was 2nd. Dr. Kornder, Dr. Tangwe, Dr. Timjak, Mukherjee, Ropka, Broswai, I'm close. Labanese and Gosselin were the top 10 enrolling Canadian sites.
That was a very nice effort.
I did my best on that one. I want to go over a couple fun facts we had. These were contributed to the group by the data group, the CEC group. Everybody provided this information to look back over the trial. The oldest patient was 98. The youngest was 27 years old.
Do you remember who enrolled them?
That I do not. That would be some added things I could look up for the next time. There were 160,000 CRF pages reviewed, and something to really note is this is our last paper CRF trial in the mega trials venue.
So Kathy, I'm sure there are a lot of people applauding that.
They should be.
I mean, how much is 160,000 pages? Does that go to the moon, or halfway around the Earth, or
I think that
to
might
downtown Durham and back?
I think that might be a good question to ask Curtis later when we get a question
How many
answered.
stories is that of paper?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
The sites
yeah.
worked hard, right?
They worked very hard to get all that in. And then the enzymes all had to be reviewed, and there were 37,876 enzyme pages that had 152,000 individual results from that. So that is and these all were SDV'd in-house, and a big thank you has to go out to both the sites and the data management team. They looked at a lot of enzymes to get this trial done.
And now we know why some of them are cross-eyed sitting out here
Exactly.
in the audience watching this.
The clicker's a little slow. Uh-oh. And this number I found entirely unbelievable, that there were greater than 215,000 queries. To me, there had to have been many more than that. It just seemed like every day we were looking at hundreds of queries. But that was the number they came up when they added all the different query reports together. And there are 1,415 hotline calls. And I'm sure that Pierluigi thinks he answered most of those. But I know they were shared. I saw the call logs, so others did answer those as well. Another thing is there were a total of 4,489 suspected events and 3,341 patients that had to be reviewed. And that is a lot of patients to actually have to review each one of those charts for additional documents. And they averaged 10 pages of source documents per patient. So that ended up being about 33,000 pages of source docs that actually were reviewed by the people in this building, and a great accomplishment. Okay. And then we reached the finish line. The last patient was enrolled August 8th, 2008 by Dr. Van de Hoff's site in the Netherlands. We enrolled 9,492 patients. We locked the database December 17th, 2008, and the final results were presented March 30th, 2009 at the ACC. And that wraps up my initial presentation. Any questions?
So, thanks, Kathy. That was terrific. So it's I think the highlight here is it's a lot of work, right, on our part here at the Coordinating Center, but what we put these sites through to pull off one of these trials.
I am sure that these sites never ever wanted to hear our. I know they had caller ID sometimes, and we called them so much, and they were most thankful for when we were finally accomplished getting all the results in.
So we're going to take a couple questions. I see we have one question from our audience here in Durham.
Dr. Newby, could you tell us about how this trial was monitored and what the thoughts were around how that was done? I know the sites are familiar with some of that, but just to give us them the overview of what we were thinking.
Sure. So that voice that you just heard was Curtis Campbell, who is our lead data, what should I call you, Curtis? Our lead data specialist here. So his question about monitoring is a good one, and Kathy will need to jump in here because this is really her bailiwick. But so the idea with monitoring is not to over-monitor and not to under-monitor. So we're doing a big trial of a drug that's already approved. We already know the safety profile, and what we're really looking to do is just to ensure that we're getting quality data to support what was a new indication for a drug dosing and a different timing of use to answer that question. So we spot check basically. So we 100% source document verified or monitored, if you will, in-house the enzymes, and you heard about that because that's really what defines our endpoint of the trial. And then our monitoring rate for when we went to the sites to actually look line by line, item by item, we did 15% in this trial, right? Overall, around the world. Which is enough for us to catch problems, but not so onerous that we're at the sites all the time for 9,000, almost 10,000 patients. Is that's pretty standard, I think, for phase 3 trials. But is that a fair kind of summary of what we did? And then I guess we monitor all the SAEs. Right.
We monitored all the SAEs, and when you went on site, you checked all the informed consent forms to make sure they were signed properly. And also just to make sure that each visit that GCP was being correctly done so that the reg binders were being looked at and the site was following good clinical practice.
Oh, I see another question.
So for those of us that are new to clinical trials or are first learning about clinical trials, can you tell us how and if these patients are followed up now going forward?
That's also an excellent question. So, are we following these patients going forward? And Every trial is a little bit different. The acute coronary syndrome trials, like the early ACS trial, we usually do an endpoint that is our main endpoint, and the results that we presented at the American College of Cardiology were through 30 days. So the patients follow day to day to day in hospital, and then they get a follow-up call at 30 days by the sites, not by us, to collect information that may have happened to that patient since discharge out to 30 days. And that's what we present as our primary results. And then in early ACS, we have a 1-year follow-up that's for mortality only. So that's the only follow-up that the patients really get in this particular trial. Now that varies from trial to trial. Sometimes there will be, depending on what type of drug is being tested or under what circumstances, they may come back for visits after they leave the hospital, or they may get phone calls at 6 months and a year. So it varies a little bit from trial to trial, but in this particular trial, we stopped our main endpoint at 30 days and then one follow-up at 1 year just to check on vital status.
Right. And we're just about done with those. The first week in August will be the last 1-year calls for the study.
Let me ask a question about the drug that's at the site when the trial ends. You know, we think of a trial ending and all you do is paperwork from then on, but isn't there a lot more that's involved in finishing a trial than just doing the paperwork?
Definitely is, and part of it, during the trial, we were working with the sites. Some of the sites had the capabilities that they could destroy the drug on site and then document that and send us the paperwork. A few sites could not do that, and we sent out monitors to do the final visit. A majority of our closeout visits were done over the telephone. So they were sent documents, the site managers would call and verify, and then we'd get all the documents back at the DCRI.
Dr. Newby and Kathy, if there was one thing that we could talk to these sites about, in general, about doing clinical research, in addition to the financial considerations that they have to look at and be compensated for all the work they put in, is there something we want to say to them just about, in general, their participation both in early ACS and other studies coming down the road?
So I'll start with a few general things, and then Kathy, I'll let you chime in on your thoughts.
Okay.
So first of all, I mean, I think from my perspective from early ACS, I mean, tremendous effort. Sites hung with us for 5 years, and in a fairly challenging acute coronary syndrome trial with the time specifications that we put on finding patients and the time pressure to get them enrolled. So I think, you know, a huge effort there, and obviously compensation is important for that. So I want to congratulate all the sites on being able to do that and really putting the effort in. And I think, you know, the way that we bring drugs and strategies or change the practice of medicine in an evidence-based way is through clinical trials. So it's just critically important that we have interested and enthusiastic sites who, you know, are willing to share their patients and ask their patients to volunteer for the types of trials that we do. I think that it's important as you're considering a trial that you think about how it fits into the context of your clinical practice and that it works well within the flow. So for example, for early ACS, if you went very early to the cath lab, this was not a good trial for you because you couldn't wait the 12 hours that was required to get to the lab. So there are things when you scrutinize a protocol that you do need to think about. But I think, you know, obviously our mission here is clinical research that advances patient care. And for all the sites that invest that time and effort, compensated or not, you know, it's critically important to medical care. So, you know, kudos to all the sites who did this. Kathy?
Yeah, I definitely agree that the sites had a lot to do on their plate, and they did a really good job. Something maybe to think about for future trials would be the contact information for keeping up with those lost to follow-ups, and that is across the world, to get as much information as you can when you first enroll that patient, so that if you can't find them, that you can get access to them later down the road. And that's something that happens with every trial that we participate on. So I think that's a a learning thing that we can learn from this.
So do you think we'll ever solve the challenge of getting data submitted, you know, kind of right as the patient leaves the hospital, rather than waiting until, you know, a month or two later?
I think that would be key. The sooner you enter it, of course, the more information you're going to be able to obtain.
And isn't it easier to find if you just
Oh, yeah.
do it right when the
That's
work's
right.
in front of you?
Because what happens is the medical records can get sent on to another physician to look at, and you can't get a hold of them. So the sooner you could do this, it could make everything go a lot smoother.
And you think that'll be better anyway when we go to everything's in electronic? Now that we're done with the era of paper?
Well, I'm hoping so. With the electronic medical record and with electronic case report forms, I'm hoping that this will get better.
Okay, thank you, everybody.